All right, so welcome to our quick video about the dam project decisions flow chart. Basically what I'm going to do is review the directions and walk you through it and then make some recommendations for what I would do in terms of filling it in. Okay. So the first step is going through and looking at the different options for the dam project and the reasons why you might pick and choose any of those options. If it were me, I'd actually hold off a minute on doing this because what I'd want to do is think through the stakeholders a little bit more closely. But if you just want to plow through and do things in order, and that's perfectly legit strategy too, okay, either way, what you want to do is give yourself a few bullet points here that talk about why each of those choices would be the right choice, and one or two bullet points about why it might be the wrong choice. That would be me, because that would kind of help me think through pluses and minuses of each option before I made a final decision. So just one or two, give you some ideas. This is really, if it were me, where I would, before I looked at the options, I'd look at what do the stakeholders say. Okay. And for each stakeholder, you're going to look at the costs. So that's what are they losing? If we preserve, remove, modify, you should probably have some idea what you're thinking. But also the benefits, and that's down on the next page here. Benefits means what do they gain? Okay. In a perfect world, you'd have some cost, some gain for everybody. Because the reality is that for most of these, there should be both. For some of them, the costs are going to be a lot easier. For others, the benefits are going to be a lot easier okay, to find. So if you're looking, you can't find a cost or a benefit, that's okay. But just know you should, for most of them, you should have at least one or two bullet points of both. Okay, so up here we've got what are our arguments for and against. Then we've got what are people gaining and losing. I would take the most extreme action for what are we gaining or losing, right? Are the most extreme two actions. And look at those in there to try and make my decision. Then we want to analyze the costs and the benefits. And again, costs, what's being lost by the decision we're making, and the benefits, what's being gained. Okay. So what were and are the overall social, environmental, economic, and cultural impacts on the common good? That means what happened when we built the dam originally. Okay, so what changed? What's going on right now, or what will happen based on the choice we make. And the common good, that means just for society in general. Okay, so if we look at society in general here in Washington State, what are those costs and benefits, right? What are the social costs and benefits? What are the environmental costs and benefits, economic costs and benefits, cultural costs and benefits, right? Just in general for everybody, collectively. What do these different stakeholder groups that we looked at in step 2, what do they have in common? Okay. What do they already agree on? Because if we can get everybody on board, that's going to make this, whatever action we take, go a whole lot faster. We'll never get everybody on board for 100% of everything, but anything we can get them on board with, we should try, because it cuts down the times. What groups are affected more or less? Why? Okay. And where might we find areas of compromise? Where might we find areas of compromise? So this gets back to that idea of what can we get people on board with? We want to get the most people most of the time. And especially within those stakeholder groups, I will tell you just from some experience, it's not every individual person within a stakeholder group, right? Not every individual Native American, for example, in a tribe, or every individual whitewater rafter, right? But the ones that are the most likely to be involved. What compromises can we make? Where are there conflicts and tensions, right? Are there alternatives aside from the three options that we've given? So remember, we said keep, modify, or remove. So those seem pretty straightforward to me, but maybe there's some options within the modify category, right? That's kind of a gray area. What modifications could we make that would bring in more of these groups? Okay, so after we've done all of that, and this is really where I would start to, for step 4, I'd go back up to step 1 and kind of make a real firm choice on what I was doing. So what's the decision? What am I going to recommend? I'm the expert now, or you're the expert now, because you've done the research. You've looked at the different stakeholders involved. Okay. If you were doing this professionally, by the way, you'd have actually gone out and talked to those groups. You wouldn't just be reading about them. Okay. And I know this partially because I had some experience not in, obviously, dams, but for example, with our house and the expansion of the light link, they were talking about literally putting a light link through our house. And so Sound Transit came out and actually talked to people in our neighborhood. And they held gatherings. And they gathered lots of data. And they said part of why they chose not to go through our neighborhood was because we were really active. And we objected to having it go through our houses. All right, so what's the decision that I've made? What's the recommendations I'm going to make? For the dam. If I'm gonna modify it, what are the modifications I'm going to suggest? Why? That's what key reasons are. Okay, when it says key reasons, that's the why. Why am I making the decision I'm making? What's my evidence? What's my evidence? So what am I going to cite to say this is the right decision? Can't just be because I feel like it. Can't just be because those people complain more. Okay. Though that can be part of the decision-making process, it needs to be the why. In our case, they decided it would be too expensive to drive a train through our house. So they moved it over to the freeway. Okay. But that's what I'm looking for. This piece at the end, this step 4, this is really going to form the backbone of your presentation next week. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take all the information here and you're going to put it into something a little more concrete, kind of like the sample video I did, but better, because I didn't have enough time to do enough research to actually make that a really good presentation. So you're going to do better than I did because you've had time to do the research. All right, if you have questions, if you need help with anything, by all means, reach out and let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in class.